Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is life and death. And so much of our culture is averse to death, trying to outrun death rather than recognizing that it is a part of life. And we get to talk about how we integrate or don't integrate death into our experience of living, and what it would look like if we had a more direct and open relationship, so to speak, with death as a part of life. So before we get started, let's just take a minute to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing every cell, every organ, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any stress, any tension, negativity, or fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, electrifying, energizing, and illuminating all your cells, all your electrons, all your molecules, lighting you up from the inside out. And as you exhale any tension, any remaining stress or fatigue, negativity. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel how delicious that sensation is, and allow yourselves to become present to your body in this moment right here, right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Happy Friday to you. So another week. It's just amazing how quickly the time flies by. Anyway, we're talking about life and death. And I had a really awesome conversation last night with some folks that attended the Sustainability Now movie night. We do a movie night every Thursday, and it was a really interesting conversation. And we were talking about how death is something that it's almost a dirty word in our culture, where we talk about death in hushed tones, and the medical establishment does everything possible to stop someone from dying. And it's like we're trying to outrun death. And I remember years ago, I read a bunch of Carlos Castaneda books, and they were stories of a shaman, really, and the guy Carlos Castaneda was essentially being an apprentice to the shaman. And one of the things that I remember is having death as your advisor, like on your left shoulder, to be there to guide you in your life, to recognize that we are going to die. Each of us is going to die, and have that knowledge as a source of guidance and wisdom in our lives to maybe help direct our choices. But the thing is, in Western culture, at least in the US, medicine is kind of, it seems, trying to conquer death. And as a result, people are still alive past the time where their lives have quality, like what we are alive but not living. And we have so much of that happening where we're keeping people alive beyond beyond the point of any even consciousness, just keeping people alive to keep them alive, on a ventilator, for instance, past any point of consciousness or quality of life. And so I wonder what we're not going to outrun death. We know this, right? And being truly, essentially beings of light or expressions of a greater consciousness in a limited, in terms of time, a time limited form as human beings. What would it look like if we were to have a more integrated relationship with death, and rather than the fear of it, rather than the avoidance of it, rather than the frightening mystique, something that we're trying to avoid at all costs. I wonder, it was so interesting. We were talking about transition moments and end of life for people that we've known and loved. And I remember my grandmother was just on the edge of 95. Good morning, Raja. I don't think I've seen you here before. Welcome, welcome. So good to have you. We're talking about death and dying, and what it might look like if we were able to integrate death in our experience of life. It used to be that people would die at home among loved ones. And I've seen now with hospice care, that's happening more and more, but so many people are dying in hospitals with all kinds of wires and tubes and electronics tied up, tying them up and prolonging their life beyond any quality, and not among loved ones. And what would it be if we could embrace our loved ones, so that when they're dying in the company of people who care for them, and dying in a familiar place, and not, I think that in so many ways we have tried to sanitize death and our lives in so many ways. Good morning, Grace Isis. So wonderful to have you here. We're talking about death and dying, and really what we're talking about is shifting our cultural perspective from death as an adversary to death as part of living. That it's part of the natural cycle of life, is that we die, and all the extraordinary measures that we have come to consider as a norm with medicine and hospitals and prolonging life at all costs. I wonder, I know for myself, I don't want to be living attached to all kinds of tubes and taking all kinds of drugs that affect my quality of life. In order to just prolong it, it's like, what are we doing? What are we prolonging? it's interesting. We were talking about wills and medical directives. So not too long ago, I had a will drafted at the insistence of my brother because I finally have some assets that he was very concerned might disappear into the ethers if I didn't have a will. So in the process of, energy, right? In the process of having this will drafted, I also had medical directives drafted. And it's been like, for me, I chose to have a DNR, like I don't want any extraordinary measures implemented to keep me alive. If I'm going to die, let me die. And if I'm going to live, let me live. I don't want extraordinary measures to bring me back to life, so to speak. And I think part of that for me is that this human experience, I'm here for it, and there's a part of me that has felt sort of imprisoned by it a lot in my life. And while I'm enjoying the game of it so much more at this phase of my life than I have in my past, I still am ready and open to that transition that takes me home, so to speak. And so if it comes to a time when I could be allowed to die and move on versus being kept alive with extraordinary measures, I don't choose that. I choose to be allowed to leave when I've fulfilled my time here. When I've completed this journey, I want to be able to leave it gracefully. And I wonder for you, what are your thoughts about death and dying? I had the privilege of being with my dad when he passed, and it was a request that I had made of him to say, I want to be there. I want to be there when you leave. And he said, no, nobody wants to be there for that, and I said, no, I really do. And what happened was that he went into a non-conscious state before I really got a chance to say goodbye. But I was with him, and I was caring for him. He was on morphine to ease his pain as he was dying. He was dying of pneumonia. He had a lot of other conditions, and I would go into his room and give him his medicine at certain intervals. And the last time that I went in to be with him, it was clear that he was laboring. And I said to him, Dad, it's okay. It's okay. You can go. I love you, just allowing him the grace to pass. And he did, right there and right then, in my presence with me. And I consider that one of the greatest gifts that he ever gave me, was to allow me to be present for his passing And it was a moment of profound grace and generosity on his part, and that he waited for me and granted me that gift. And I I I wonder what would shift if we allowed death to be more of a part of our lives, something that is where we can be part of ceremony, where we can be present, where we can be connected, rather than trying to outrun it, rather than trying to avoid it and put it away in an antiseptic closet of some sort or another. What would it be like if we could be present to it, when it's happening? I mean, over this past year, so many people have suffered losses, and even our language. I agree that we do suffer losses, and being able to have a gentle passage is such a profound gift. I think that we've culturally confused, death with mourning and death with loss, whereas death is a transition for everyone, for the people who are passing as well as the people who remain, and the grieving, the loss, the sadness over not having that person or being in our lives, in a physical way, is deeply, painful. But that's not death, that's loss. And I think making the distinction between death and loss maybe can help us to be present and more connected. I had a very, very, very beloved cat who, had a stroke, and his health was failing, and, my dad was a veterinarian, and we put him to sleep. I muscle tested and have been muscle testing for years, so I always have asked my pets, when is it time to go, and do you want to be euthanized, or do you want to be, good morning, Dennis. We're talking about life and death, and really being able to be present in the process of passing, and to incorporate it into our lives as part of living, rather than something to avoid at all costs. So this cat, Max, he was like one of the loves of my life, and he said through muscle testing that he was ready to go. And, we were, because my dad's a vet, he came to my house, and we were able to have him be comfortable, and I was able to be holding him and be present to loving him. And what a gift, right? What a gift for him to not have to suffer more, for him to be where he's comfortable and familiar. It's funny, this is so many years ago, and still there are tears, right? For the loss of him, for not having him as a presence in my life from day to day. And yet for him, what a gift, and a gift to me, to allow him to transition where where we were connected, and where he was so deeply loved, and where he felt comfortable, where he felt at home. I having culturally experienced so many deaths over this past year, so many people dying of COVID, and it makes me think about when we're present to the cycle of life. I think that there's such a great richness available to us as we are kind of advised by death, reminded that we're not here forever, that our passage is a precious gift for whatever time we're here, and part of the conversation last night was very interesting. One of the people is an animal communicator, and she was recounting a story of a kitten that was maybe 5 weeks old that died, and the communication with the kitten was, why so short a time? Why did you just come and go so quickly? And the response from the kitten was, I'd never been in a body before. I wanted to try it out and see if I liked it. And if I did, if I did, I would come back. And, we think about the tragedy of people dying young, and animals, passing, and people passing, and what if it's all in its own time, it's all in its own perfect time. I think that that's probably more of how it is. And then I wonder, with all the extraordinary measures of medicine, where we keep people alive a lot longer than they would have been without all those extraordinary measures. I don't know if that's necessarily a benefit. And I can say that actually from my vantage point, probably I would have died years and years ago, because I have had asthma through my life, and there were times when, had I not received a shot of epinephrine or asthma medication, that I probably would have died. So it's a mixed question. Maybe I guess I haven't really thought of it, but perhaps I'm living on borrowed time. And I can say that I'm grateful for that at this point in my life. Although at other times in my life, it was so painful that I spent years actually wishing to die, because I was so sad, and life felt so hard. So I guess I can say that in its perfection, even with the extraordinary measures of the medication and oxygen and epinephrine and whatever have kept me here, I'm not trying to outrun death, and I can consider it as a wise advisor, to to recognize that we have a limited time here. What do we do with that limited time? You know, how do we be with that limited time? And maybe being advised by our death can give us a greater appreciation, a greater presence to the gifts of our lives. And to recognize the passage as something that is also a gift, you know, moving into a realm where we're going home, where we're going back to the truth of our nature, where we're going back into the experience of that oneness and that wholeness that that we came from. So I'm wondering about your perspective on death. Certainly, like with those in my life that I love, I'm not eager for their passing because I love having them in my life, right? Like Maggie and my cat Jewel and my human connections, my family, my friends. I think, again, I think that we conflate our fear and upset about death with the experience of loss. And I think that it's two separate things, right? There's the loss of the physical constancy of our loved ones, and then there's death itself. And I think I think there's a beauty to being able to die in a place that is familiar, surrounded by loved ones, right? There's something quite beautiful about allowing that transition. I think it's so unfortunate that so many people die in pain and in the antiseptic environment of a hospital where it's an industry, where we're separate from the life that we've led. You know, I'm wondering what you're thinking about this. What's the story for you in thinking about death? Is it an awful thing to imagine your own death, or the death of people you love? I personally don't want to be dying. I don't want to die in a hospital. I don't want to die hooked up to all kinds of equipment or wires or fluids. Or so Rosalind says, for the people left behind, yes, for the people left behind, we relive the experience and maybe rewrite the story. From reliving the family's death makes us change our perspective for how we want to live the rest of our own lives. For me, I'm okay with my time whenever it comes. The hospital would be scary to live the last days. I'd rather be in home. I'm with you, Rosalind, 100%. And I think in being present to those we love who are dying, I think it does allow us to shift our perspective and to make new choices. Thank you so much for what you're saying. And I agree. I don't want to die in a hospital, for sure. My dad died at home. hospice. And I think he was in his bed that he loved. He was as comfortable as he could have been made. He wasn't conscious for the last few days. But I don't believe he was in pain. And I do believe he was still there, like just the fact that I could talk to him and and say it's okay, and that he waited for me, and I believe he was conscious in some capacity, like present, that he was still there. And yeah, I wonder what our culture would be like if we didn't fear death. I think it would be very, very different. If we could, there are many traditions of ceremony and recognition of the sacred passing of death, the sacred transition, where the body is cleansed and I think there's a different level of closure that's available to us, that is a big part of our humanity. I think that we get to be more present to nature and to cycles, that there's so much more available when we presence ourselves to the transitory nature of our being, not in a bad way, just to be like that's part of our lives. Yeah, so interesting musings, yes, to be looking at how death is so much a part of life, and what happens if we are connected in that process, and to that process for ourselves and for our loved ones. What might we do differently? How might we live differently, knowing that, really truly knowing that we will die? I think that's a conversation that so many people just couldn't have or can't have. And I wonder, when we allow for that conversation, especially as people are moving closer to that transition, to be talking about what that is, what is it like with death so close, and how is that shaping the moments that we live? I believe there's a wisdom and a richness that can come from recognizing that we are here for a brief passage. So what I invite us all to allow ourselves to be present. So Rosalind says, Terry Angel from EWN will be offering death doula services. I have thought of that myself, Rosalind. That's awesome that Terry is doing that. And Rosalind continues, I imagine she will incorporate prayer and spirituality and maybe explain to loved ones what can be experienced in the life after life. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that. And I think there is incredible magic in that transition to be moving into a different realm consciously, for the person who's dying and the people who are connected. I think that there's such a profound gift there of the mystical and wondrous and spiritual. So yeah, I think it's something to be thinking about, not obsessively, but something worth thinking about. Like, what I don't want to live at all costs. I want to live the life that I came here to live for as long as I'm here to live it. And then if the quality of my life is no longer a high quality, I don't imagine I want to be here anymore. And we were talking about Kevorkian, who was about the right to die, allowing people that were terminally ill to be able to say, I'm done. It's enough. I don't want to suffer this pain anymore. And to have the right to choose. My grandma, who was 95, was crying daily, saying, I just want to go. I'm done. I want it to be done. So I think that there's something to that choice, to be able to choose that it's time to go. So anyway, interesting, thought-provoking. Again, I so appreciate you and your engagement in these conversations, and for having these conversations with me. But I think that that's it for today. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. Please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network's different venues. There's Enlightened World Living and EWN, One with the Earth. And just so much love to you. And allow yourself to be present to the fact that we're alive for this brief moment. And let's cherish that and honor it, and honor death also as part of our lives. So I wish you a wonderful, wonderful weekend with so much love to you. Until next time.